My name is Professor David Smith. I'm Emeritus Professor of Pharmacology in the University of Oxford. There can't be anyone really nowadays who hasn't come across Alzheimer's disease in a relative or in a friend, and it is a totally devastating disease, as you all know. The problem is that a lot of people think that it's an inevitable part of normal aging. It isn't. Alzheimer's disease, we now know, is a true disease. And as a true disease, we can identify the causes and we can tackle those and start preventing it. That's the crucial thing.
I'm Emma. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, my aunt had Alzheimer's, and now my mother has Alzheimer's. And I must say, I think I might well be the next in line. My mother was a very capable, fun-loving, sociable, hard-working sort of person, and it's really horrible to see her reduced to this vulnerable person, completely dependent on other people. I mean, she knows something's wrong with her brain, and she suffers the indignity of not even being able to do anything about it. She is totally powerless. And the loss of control for Alzheimer's sufferers is probably the worst thing. I mean, you have total control over your life, and bit by bit you no longer have that control. It is not a disease where you fade away into oblivion. It's a horrible, massive struggle, and it's full of anxiety and fear.
We can't cure it. I don't believe we'll be able to cure it because it's the result of loss of nerve cells in the brain. Large parts of the brain have died away in people with advanced Alzheimer's. We can't put them back, but we can try and prevent that process of atrophy, as it's called.
We started the Brain Biocentre, which is part of the charitable Food for the Brain Foundation, over 10 years ago. We treat hundreds of people every year. We have hundreds of thousands of people who visit our website to find out the tremendous importance that nutrition plays in mental health. Our aim is for a future where psychiatrists and doctors are fully aware about the importance of nutrition, and it becomes a first resort, a first thing that is checked for, not a last resort or an afterthought.
My name is John. I'm a retired doctor. About 5 years ago, I began to notice difficulty in coming down hills and down steps, with some loss of balance. This didn't trouble me, but 3 years ago, after a holiday, I found that I couldn't drive my car properly because I couldn't feel the pedals. I became somewhat depressed, confused, lost a sense of time. While I could usually complete a quick crossword over my breakfast, I found that I was reduced to doing 1 or 2 possible clues.
Recently in Oxford we discovered raised levels of a blood amino acid called homocysteine is a powerful risk factor for Alzheimer's. Now overall, it's been estimated in the world at large that about half of all cases of Alzheimer's may be largely due to these risk factors in the population. That's currently about 17 million people whose Alzheimer's disease should, in theory, be preventable by modifying these causes.
From Food for the Brain, I've learned that there's a correlation between homocysteine levels, high homocysteine levels, and brain shrinkage, and that it's possible to bring these down with B vitamins. And that already is evidence that when those levels are lowered, that the rate of the shrinking of the brain is less. This is really exciting news.
So we did a clinical trial on 168 people where we gave half of them the high doses of the B vitamins and half of them placebo, and we measured the rate of shrinkage of the brain over a 2-year period. These scans show examples from our study. So the scan on the left shows the subtraction image of a scan done at baseline subtracted from the one 2 years later on a person whose homocysteine level was really quite high at baseline. It was 22, and it went up over the 2-year period to 30, which is really very high. And the subtraction image shows in blue where the brain has shrunk by up to 3 millimeters over the 2-year period. This is a lot of tissue that's lost. We decoded this person. We discovered he was indeed on a placebo. He hadn't been receiving the vitamins, and his average rate of shrinkage was 2.5% per year. which is almost in the Alzheimer's range. The next picture shows someone whose baseline homocysteine was also quite high at 24, but that went down to 12 over the 2-year period, and that turned out to be because he was on the B vitamin treatment. So this is an example of B vitamins lowering homocysteine. And his rate of brain shrinkage was very, very much lower. It was about 1/5 of that of the other person, about 0.5% per year. So we have a dramatic example of how B vitamins can actually slow the rate of shrinkage of the brain. We looked at this in relation to the baseline homocysteines, and we found that those people in the highest homocysteine level in the population, we could slow the rate of shrinkage of the brain by 53%, which is a big effect.
I was started on vitamin B12 and the other B vitamins in strong dosage. Slowly and steadily over the months, my walking has improved, my balance has improved, and the depression, which was very troublesome, has gone. My ability to do the crosswords has come back, and I can now, as you can see, have done today's crossword as I do every morning over breakfast.
Quite a lot of research in the last 15 or 20 years trying to identify risk factors. And of course, what most people know about are genes, but actually only 1% approximately of Alzheimer's disease is actually caused by a mutation in a gene.
My name's Dr. Siobhan Quinn. I'm a consultant psychiatrist. I work in the NHS and at the Brain Biocentre Clinic in London. For the last 15 years, it's become clear to me that the causes of mental health problems are seldom due to one factor. It's usually a combination of factors.
So what we can do now is to try and find those non-genetic risk factors which are associated with an increased likelihood of developing the disease. And the ones that have been found so far are diabetes, high blood pressure, possibly high cholesterol, smoking, poor education, lack of social interaction.
The most remarkable improvements have been by correcting vitamin B deficiencies, both in memory and in mobility problems.
We built the cognitive function test, which is completely free, so anyone can do it at home. And over 150,000 people have done it on our website, but we want that number to be in the millions, and we want people to come back year on year and track their memory. And the reason for doing this is we can look at people whose memory gets worse and whose memory gets better, and we can research and find out what really works, what makes the difference. There's so much that we can do, but we need money, we need the funds to be able to do it.
There are a number of promising areas which could explain why Alzheimer's is increasing at such a rate. There's things going on with the amount of insulin and glucose in the brain, and there could be problems there. There's also suggestions that there's a lack of certain fatty acids which are needed to build up brain cells and get them to work properly, and also antioxidants. And then finally, there's the role of an amino acid called homocysteine, which causes effects both in the blood and also in the brain, which can be brought down with B vitamins. And there's been a very good trial run by Professor David Smith at Oxford on that. The real problem with this is that at the end of the day, the amount of research that is done on these promising leads and the amount of money that's spent on it is almost zero. So given that there are several new areas which look really promising as possible treatments or prevention, what we need now is to actually spend some more money on researching it. And that's why I'm very pleased to hear about what's happening with the Food for the Brain Foundation. And what I would like to see is more money spent on both education and also on ways of screening people to find out who can be treated early.
Prevention is the way to tackle Alzheimer's disease. The drug companies are spending thousands of billions of dollars on trying to find a treatment for the disease, but I think that's misguided. What we need to do is to look earlier in the disease process and find ways of preventing it from developing and preventing it from continuing. And that's where these nutritional interventions and other interventions of lifestyle could have a huge effect.
I used to think that Alzheimer's was a disease of no hope, but I have been reading about the Food for the Brain's research into the Alzheimer's Prevention Project, and I must say I'm really excited to see what's being done with that. I think they're doing amazing work. I think it gives us hope for all of us who might be suffering, who are suffering, and I think the Food for the Brain's Alzheimer's Prevention Project is really worthy of our support.
I think that the Alzheimer's Prevention Project, run by Food for the Brain, is very important, and anything we can do to prevent this disease should be encouraged by us all.
I believe that in most cases Alzheimer's is a preventable disease with the right diet, nutrition and lifestyle. But we need to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. We need the means to research and to educate. We need government agencies to step up to the mark and start taking nutrition seriously. And we need everyone from the age of 50 to do early screening, for example, with the cognitive function test. You can help us by becoming a friend of Food for the Brain. Every donation you give helps us help thousands of people to learn the best ways of reducing their risk of developing this terrible and preventable disease.